Yo, what is going on today, YouTube? Hope you guys are doing fantastic. Today is Tuesday, tier list day. That's not a thing. Today is not Tuesday. We're not doing that ever. But today is doing a tier list for mid lanes. And it's going to be more than just mages. It's going to be some guardians, some assassins, some hunters. Only it won't be no guardians. We're not ranking those. Except Charon, because that god is OP. I've been playing a lot of mid lane recently on my Pornstar Bacchus account. Here is the record I'm rocking, 54 and 22. This is my mid lane account. So as you guys know, I have 5 accounts, all of them for a different role. This is my mid lane account. And yeah, this kind of shows that I've been playing the role a lot and getting to a pretty high rank. I've also been an SPL player. Those are my credentials. The pool of gods will be ranking S, A, B, C, D. Going through these 50 gods. Oh, nice little 50, even number. When starting with Agni, who's getting a pretty insane change, and his rank might go up a little bit after this. Ultimate, he's going to be able to move in. He is going to be slowed a little bit when he's using it, so he might raise up a little bit more. I'm going to put Agni in A tier. I think he's a very solid god, very above average. I don't think he's in that top tier, but with this change, maybe he goes to the top of A tier, or maybe even sneaks his way into S tier. Upwash, they had to kill this character because of how good he was in solo lane, and he hasn't recovered yet. I think his itemization is okay right now. I just think he doesn't do enough damage for how unsafe he is. He's very easy to deal with. He does have very high damage, very high area control, but for the most part, you can kind of just one-shot him and then ignore him. AMC, top of S tier. What an insanely OP character. The AMC build has not changed. It's just Hunter mids have a lot of pressure. They scale well to the late game because of Bluestone. And yeah, it's very easy. On her. We'll put on her in B tier. I think he's very average. I don't think there's anything exceptional about on her. I don't think there's anything terrible about on her. He's just fine. Anubis will put into B tier. I'm having him slightly higher than Upwash because being able to move in the change from last year, very nice. I think he's got incredible mid-camp control, which is very important. And then I also think he scales well into the late game. Not like super insane, but he scales well into the late game enough that I think a god who can farm early, has really good 1v1s, and goes good enough into the late game, I think I'll put him in average. Aphrodite, horrible mid laner. I figured I would just rate her just so you guys know. She is an absolutely terrible mid laner. She's probably the bottom 3 god in this entire tier list in mid. And she might be the worst. Okay, you know I said I was only going to do one guardian. Yeah, I forgot about Atlas. And I'm doing it because Benny plays it, and I've played it now a game or two. And it feels pretty good. The level 1, you kind of play it like Charon, where you just use your health and your just naturally tanky stats to outclear. He scales very well into the late game. His biggest issue and Charon's biggest issue is they have very bad mid-camp control. I think Atlas is slightly better because he has the third AoE auto AoE auto, and Charon doesn't have that. But I think Atlas is actually pretty solid. And I think this is just more so on most mages being bad than Atlas being like super strong. Baba, gotta put her in A tier. Very safe, farm-oriented mid, wants to go late game. Once she goes late game, she's very hard to deal with, does a lot of damage, very safe, very few weaknesses, but she's not in that top tier. I've always been a Baron hater, so I'm going to put him in C tier. I think his damage is too slow and close to him. I think he's very easy to get on top of and to just kill. His mid-camp control is fine. It's not terrible. It's not great. I do think that if you can go late game, though, he is a very good mid laner because he just kills whichever frontliner is too far forward. And I think that's always going to be really good in ranked. Bastet, I think Bastet is so underrated right now in mid and in jungle. She farms very well. She's very hard to deal with. She has a couple bad matchups, obviously, like a Willix in the jungle, and then some mid laners that can punish her jumping in and then also be there on the way, jumping back out. But that mid laner also has to be very safe against her CC, her damage. So I see very few downsides with Bastet, A tier. Chang'e, not too great. Not too great. Doesn't farm all too well. Mid-camp control is pretty meh because you have to use 2 uses of your 1. She does scale to a one-shot assassin eventually, but it is very hard to get there. Charon, I'll put him A tier, but there is a case to be made that he's S tier. Again, kind of like Atlas, where you're playing just to get through that early game. You trade your health and use your natural protections a little bit early to farm out. Not great mid-camp control, but mid-game and late game, unbelievably OP character. Chiron, Bluestone, like same story as AMC, just a little bit worse early, a little bit worse mid, and a little bit worse late. But compared to On Her, slightly worse early, but better mid, better late game. And that's on top of, or that's the fact that Bluestone is just so OP. And On Her isn't a Bluestone god because he only has 2 abilities that make use of it. Neither of them are really good poke abilities. So Chiron's mid-camp control also not great. His farming control farming potential is not that great, but being a hunter, you can just auto down a lot of camps, so it's not that bad. Chronos. Some of you got a little bothered where I had Chronos in the ADC tier list, and I had him below Olorun. The reason that I have Chronos in these low tiers is for, one, he has never played in ranked. Two, when he is played in ranked, he's split pushing, which is just something that if lower level players knew how to deal with it, then it is very bad and it's very easy to beat. Unfortunately, they just don't know how to deal with it. If this character team fights, if this character plays any portion of the game in a 5v5 or a 1v1 or a 2v2, he is just not good. That's the reason I have him in D tier. He's only good at winning games by split pushing. Cleo, slightly worse than Bastet. Her level 1, 2, 3, 4, not nearly as good. Her 5 does give her unparalleled farming potential, and I do think that she's one of the best late game assassins. Problem is, most of the time you just want another mage. Like with Bastet has CC on top of being an assassin. Cleo doesn't have any CC, so she's really just damage, and at that point, would you rather just have a mage most of the time? But she is very good assassin oriented. She does do more damage than a lot of other gods, but for the most part, just having a magical god in mid just feels a little bit better. But her objective damage is good. Her farming is pretty good. Disco, I'm a Disco hater, but even I recognize she's pretty average right now. I was going to put her a lot lower, and I think I could argue that she's maybe C tier, but just her passive alone, giving it to an OP solo laner, it is enough for me to bump her to B tier. He said, I hate this character. I think she's such a volatile character where if she gets ahead, she's very suffocating. If she's fallen behind, she's just useless like an opwash. She has decent farming potential. Late game, she is exceptional because of her ult executing, or her ult mitigating damage, also healing, also being an execute on objectives. So she has a lot of stuff going for her, but I just feel like she just dies too easily. Freya, C tier. Rings are terrible. The only reason that she's in C is because her kit's just absolutely broken. I actually like playing Boomba's Hades in mid because he just farms camps very easily. Once you have like 4 or 3 points into your 3, you can just go to mid camps, auto all the minions 3 times, and then just execute them with your 3 and your Boombas with the extra damage. You just kill it and just your farming potential is insane. When you go late game, obviously you're not the best mage, but you're really not that bad. This character's had so many buffs that his late game is not bad anymore. Hebo, bad. There's a lot of things I could talk about with Hebo. His mid camp control is fine. His late game is good. It just feels impossible to get there, kind of like ESET. You just get poked down too easily. Your all-in potential is not nearly as scary as it used to be because of all of his nerfs. Yeah, C tier. I think Hel's a slightly better mid laner than Aphrodite because she has this aggression that it doesn't feel like Aphro has. She doesn't like put herself out of position, but she can just walk up 2-1 in dark stance, poke you down a lot, back away, heal up, and do the same thing over and over again. With Aphrodite, a lot of the times, she has to get even closer because she has to confirm the 1 stun first and then 3 after. So it really doesn't feel that great. Hel doesn't scale that well into the late game because she's just like this peel-oriented mage and her damage isn't that high. And that's because of the healing change patch last year, which I made a video about because I'm not a fan of where Aphro and Hel are from where they used to be. Hera, I think Hera's fine. Mirrodin user, Deso, very good with it. She can kind of one-shot. Her farming potential isn't great, and she has to scale to the late game, but she's fine. Ixchel, I think Ixchel's fine too. She has decent mid-camp control because she has just 3 abilities she can spam. Her push potential's fine. Her biggest issue is her survivability, but as long as you're playing with a teammate most fights, you are still pretty hard to deal with. And she feels very suffocating when she has like a Khepri or Ganesh or a Geb with her that can kind of stand in front of her, give her shields, and just get healed off of. I wish there was 2 Janices that I could rank. Because Janice 1, if you think you are a good Janice, you're probably not, just to put that out there. You're probably not, unless your name is like Hurrywind or you're an SPL player or you're like a high tier SCC player, maybe high Masters player. If you're a good Janice and you know how to use his portals, you know how to use his ult, you can manipulate your 2 to hit multiple cover area, you 3 around you and your team a lot, he's A tier. Most of you though with Janice, C tier. You position poorly, you use ones badly, you use the ult badly, you don't use the utility of the character, you don't hit your abilities enough, you put yourself out of position, you're very easy to kill. C tier. You know I said there was only 1 Guardian? Well, I was wrong 2 times, because there's 3 Guardians. Yorm. Yorm's fine. He farms very well. His biggest issue, in my opinion, is that his late game just isn't great, because a lot of his abilities are unconfirmable, but mostly his ult is what I mean. A lot of times, if you go underground and you knock up, you're just going to die when you pop out, and then the ult is very hard to confirm, but he farms very well. He's very suffocating early, so we'll put him in fine. Cuckoo's busted. I shouldn't have to explain it. Cuckoo's busted.
Oh, snag.
Maman after a nurse feels really bad. I do not think, and I said the same thing with her and Bake. I thought just because they're new characters, there's a little bit harder to deal with, but they're really not that OP and they shouldn't be nerfed again. Well, what happened? Maman and Bake got complained about too much, and now both of them are just dead characters because they're just not good. She doesn't farm well. She runs out of mana very quickly. If she does go late game, even then, her late game is not that scary most of the time because she needs like 6 full items because that's like just the problem with mages. I mean, C tier. I can't put her any higher. Marty, same positives as AMC. Only difference is slightly worse farming in the early mid game, but slightly safer late game. Merlin, we'll put Merlin in A tier. The tablet build is very good with him, so he's good in that regard. He is pretty hard to deal with because he's building so tanky with breastplate, and Gem of Focus makes him very quick. Only issue I see is that his early game, I'm talking mainly level 1 to like 5, he's pretty exploitable, but beyond that, I think he's good. Morgan, I think Morgan, with her kit and just how strong it is, will always be at least okay. A lot of self-peel, a lot of good damage, good chase potential. Farming does feel a little weird because a lot of times you have to use 3 abilities on camps, but that's like really the only issue. Neith, I'm a Neith hater. D tier, don't care. Did I say Bluestone was absolutely busted late game and she's a Bluestone user? Yep, don't care. D tier. Nox, C tier. If you can hit your combo consistently and your team isn't reliant on your mid lane damage, like if you have like a solo lane Jormungandr who's building a little bit of damage, and you have a hard carry ADC, not like a Neith or a Chiron, I think Nox can actually be pretty good if you can hit your abilities. Most of the times, though, mid lane is a damage-reliant role, and if you pick Nox and you're not hitting literally every ability, your damage is going to be too low. Your utility won't matter. Nuwa, I really want to put Nuwa in A tier. The only thing that's keeping me from putting her in A tier is just how bad her early game is. She is like the opposite of Cuckoo, where Cuckoo clears and leaves. Nuwa waits for you to clear, and then leaves. So a lot of time it puts her on the back foot for most things with camps. So a lot of times she just falls behind. She is still very good late game. Ult just gives a free massive chunk to the enemy. Can also confirm kills. Also really strong into jungler 1v1s because you just drop ult and your teammate just has an extra 500 health advantage. Olaron, in mid lane he's terrible. He just gets killed by the assassin. He can't farm that well. He tries to stand on tower line because he's so good early game, but he doesn't have the safety of his support, so D tier. Persephone. I actually don't think Persephone's too bad right now. I do think the upside of having a mage who gets free gold means they get to late game faster, which is actually massive for current mages because they literally need 6 items and like a 500 pot to be effective. So really, this is the best meta for Persephone in a long time. So B tier. She farms pretty good early. Her mid-camp control is whatever. Her farming control on jungle camps is whatever. But her lane control and her lane farming is really good. Poseidon, same issue with Upwash. She got gutted by the solo lane abuse gods, or by the solo lane abuse players, and now his kit just doesn't do enough damage. He farms pretty well. His early game's fine, but a lot of times mid-late game, you just feel useless. Ra is... I'm going to put Ra in good, actually. Ra is just such a good farming god, and then late game, he has the payoff of having really good chase down potential, or really good dive potential with his ult. And then he's also very hard to dive with his 2-3. His weaknesses, he's not very good 1v1s against junglers. Junglers kind of just blink on him and kill him. But he does have some semblance of outplay with the slow immunity on the 2 and the CC immunity on the ult. Problem is, most of the time is it doesn't matter. Junglers just kill you. But if you can kind of play smart around the enemy jungler, I think Ra is insanely good. Raijin is fine. After his nerfs, same as Poseidon and Upwash, he just doesn't feel as great. He doesn't have as much oomph. But I still think he's better than those 2 gods are. He farms pretty well in mid, farms mid camps good enough, and then he just has a lot of CC in the ult in 3. Scylla, I'm a hater, C tier. Bad early game. She doesn't have that great late game payoff that she used to have. Her 2v2s are really reliant on hitting her 1, which is like, she's almost like Nox in regards to her combo. The difference is Scylla's got a little bit more use out of not using like the combo. Like you can kind of use your 2 to follow up. Nox uses 2 to follow up. It doesn't feel as good, but I'm not a fan of Scylla. She's very safe. But a lot of times when you're playing a god like Scylla who's so safe is, yeah, maybe you're not dying, but you're not getting any damage off, and I'd rather have you on something that might die and do a lot more damage. Set C tier, after the few nerfs he's had, his farming feels bad. I do think if you get a small lead with Set, though, he is very strong, and he's very good at farming. The problem is getting that lead. I also think his late game doesn't feel as great as it used to, But maybe that's more of just like a feeling than how it actually is, because I actually don't think he's eating a nerf. C tier is all I can put him at. Soul's terrible. Same thing as Olaron. She wants to stand in tower lines, pressure you, but she just dies so easily. Morgan, she's fine. She farms pretty well, and then she transforms out of being a mage into a useful role. So B tier. Thoth is incredible. Absolutely insanely busted. S tier. Same positives as Cuckoo, where he's a Mirrodin god, builds book, has flat pin in his kit. Well, that's not like a Cuckoo positive, it's a him positive. And then when it goes late game, he's just got one-shot potential. Pokes out most mages, pokes out most assassins, and has a lot of self-survivability. Tiamat, whatever I said about Merlin, copy and paste for Tiamat. Good tablet build, user, not great early, insanely good late, a lot of outplay potential, very hard to dive, yada, yada, yada. Suki, I think Suki, I don't know what it is, because the buff wasn't that big. The knock community on the 2 was the only change, but that's all he needed to now just feel good. He just feels very good to use. Uller, C tier. Used to be a really dominant early god, then they gutted him. Now he's only good late game with Bluestone, which is not a feels good. I'm not a fan of the character, but I can recognize that he's in a weak spot. Vulcan, fine. Good farming, good mid game, good late game. Mirrodin user, so has one-shot potential. All around, just like a fine mage. Has some outplay potential, some bad matchups, some really good matchups. Yu Wong, kind of like Scylla, where he's very safe and very hard to deal with, but a lot of the times you're trading that safety for just not getting a lot of damage off in fights. If you're very smart and a very calculated good Yu Wong, kind of like Scylla, you can be very effective and do very scary things, but most of the times it's just too difficult to be doing the most you can on this character, and why not just play something like Merlin or Morgan? Zeus, B tier. I love Zeus. I think Zeus feels very good right now. Farms incredibly well. Fights incredibly well, goes to that mid game, becomes a strength or a strong character. Late game obviously is scary because he's just very 50-50. He could get one shot or he could one shot, but that's just the payoff of Zeus. And then lastly, Zhong, A tier. I could put him in S tier, but I just want this to be like, these are the top 4 gods, and it's not close because it's really not close. These are the top 4, but I do think Zhong might be that 5th character. He is so tanky. He's so hard to deal with. You really feel like you can never commit to him because he's just going to do more damage to you than you are to him at most points. And when it goes late game, he basically becomes an assassin, but he's not squishy. So it's like, he one-shots me. I can't really one-shot him, but he does have some bad matchups. Match him into like gods like Suki, who can kind of just outpoke him, outrange him. Thoth, outpoke him, outrange him, are kind of hard to deal with. But most mage matchups, he just runs through them with. But that is the mid lane tier list, in my opinion. I added a couple other roles, a couple other gods, because I wanted to make this as deep as possible. I recognize last tier list last year where I just did mages. It just felt weirder. So I'm going to stick to this type of style. But there it is. The tier list for patch 11.2. Patch 11.3 should be out somewhat soon. Maybe we make small changes to it. But for now, this is what it's going to look like. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you guys again next time. Peace.